Love can be easy when we feel loved. But what about when it isn't? When relationships hurt and when we struggle to love ourselves, or when we see things happening in the world that are difficult to understand? What does it really mean to love unconditionally? My guest, Jennifer Rose, is an international psychic medium, channel, healer, spiritual teacher, and host of Embracing Infinity and The Love Show. Today on the Sacred Doorway podcast, we explore love beyond an emotion and what it means to practice love through some of our most difficult human experiences. Love is an interesting topic. I think it's one that we often gravitate to because it does have all those really lovely aspects to it. And it's easy to feel love when we're surrounded by other people that are also expressing love in a healthy manner. And that's your relationships. That could be
Yeah.
anything really, whether that be, work or
hmm
even love for yourself. But today, what I really wanted to tackle a little bit is how we can address the situation when maybe that isn't so easy to do. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we are in relationships, right, that can be difficult. So let me ask you, Jennifer, when you think back on the different topics that you've talked about when it comes to love and the journey that has for us spiritually, how
Yeah.
how can that affect our spiritual path?
It's, I mean, you could almost say it's everything, or you could say it's everything, because love seems to be what everything kind of always boils down to once we go through these sort of stories that get told through the experiences of our lives. And then we try to unravel it and understand what we're going to learn from it. And when we finally kind of come to the other side back into connection, we seem to be able to find, oh, it all comes down to love at the end. The consciousness, the divine, it seems to hold this sacred container that is non-dual, that can seem to hold everything, even though it's hard to be in the duality. The creator consciousness, whatever we would like to label it's that which is almost unnameable, right? It seems to hold the sacred container that is able to hold the space for everything and everyone and every being too. So yeah, it gets it gets kind of mystical. Love is very mystical, isn't it?
It really
Yeah,
is. I mean,
yeah,
and I love that you talk about the duality of
yeah.
it because really I think that's what our goal
hmm
is as a species, as a universe, is
Yeah,
to come back together as one. So to think of that
yeah,
container being able to hold both of those energies and be able to experience
yes,
love in that way, that's gorgeous.
yes.
Now, you also, as I said before, work as a medium. How has being a medium helped you to work with other people, or what have you learned about love through mediumship?
The beautiful bit thing about connecting with spirit is it is a connection to love. It is a bridge to love, and the frequency of spirit world, or the angelic realm, and just spirit in general is very high, and you really do feel completely held in unconditional love. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. And when I'm working with clients in a like one-on-one setting, for example, or even in a group setting, it's just I am in my I'm really in my power, my spiritual power, and I'm in my highest heart, and I can feel the love of spirit, and all I have is love for whoever I'm working with. So I'm not thinking about anything else but the healing that's taken place. It's really quite beautiful. So I think that helps, because getting to feel that frequency so frequently keeps reminding me of what's beyond the human. So even if
Yes.
human comes in, and it's beautiful to be human and experience all the emotions of that and everything too, but it can help to bring me back into connection if I need it.
It's really interesting because I've experienced that myself having mediumship readings. I've had family members come in that maybe I had a difficult
Yeah.
relationship with in life, and it is miraculous, quite honestly, when I look back on it, on how that can help heal a relationship even after somebody has departed.
It really does. And Some people aren't quite ready yet to connect with a loved one who's caused harm to them in the past, whether it be, emotional abuse or physical abuse. I've never had a spirit come in not apologetic, and they don't come in apologetic in a shameful way. They come in apologetic in a very accountable and respectful way. They have no problem taking accountability. We have a hard time with that, but they don't, and they want to start a healing process. So it's a very uh, delicate space to hold with somebody who's been hurt, who's here, who's now
Exactly.
receiving that. This is why development of the medium is so important, so that you can hold space for the grief, you can hold space for any trauma that's happened, you can lean into how much you need to say or not say too, and take it slowly as well too. But to be able to start that healing process between the two is it's such a gift. It doesn't
Right.
get much better than that. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not something I think people should
Mm.
expect going into, that it's just going to happen all at once either. I mean, honestly, the
Yeah.
first time I had one of those family members come in, I was like, I don't know that I really want to talk to them. But there was a brief
Yeah.
message and that was fine. But as these sessions went on and they happened to pop in a few more times, I realized that I was changing.
Very often they can come and apologize over and over and over again, and you start wondering, like, why does that person keep coming in 8 times and apologizing, and I think they're just trying to see if they can get another layer of healing in that moment too, because we may have just scratched the surface with the first one, and sometimes people say, "Oh, I've already forgiven them. It's all good. I understand they did the best they could, right?" But when I give them that apology, anyways, and I'm like, they really just still want to say this to you, the eyes well up. And so you can see there's still a tender heart in there that needed to hear that, even though our mind tries so hard to be a good, forgiving person, you know. And I know, oh gosh, we cracked something open there in a really good way. We allowed some healing to happen. We released some stored grief. Ah,
Yeah,
you know,
it's beautiful. It's
yeah.
beautiful. And you touched on something just a moment ago, talking about unconditional love. So, one of the things I wanted to kind of help people understand, because that is a big concept for people to wrap their mind around, especially with the human experiences that we have, right? And we feel emotion and we feel hurt. And so, throughout a lot of different ancient spiritual ideas, belief systems, there is this concept of universal love, unconditional love. Sometimes people call it Christ force love. Um, how do you understand that kind of love? How would you explain that to someone?
I'll give you a couple of different lenses. So, from the lens of the divine, it it holds love and compassion and complete acceptance for everyone and everything. There is no one that becomes beyond redemption. And that may be hard for our human ears to hear, but I think we all kind of understand that. We know that that's true, right? And then we feel like we want to attain that as well, but then we don't know how, right? We don't know how to attain there. We just keep striving and striving to attain that. And sorry, I had an itch there. I maybe a spirit. I felt like someone was touching me. So, and that was too funny. And but then from a human lens, that might be too big of a concept, right? And then we can look at it through another lens of kind of like, what does that mean? And that's where it gets to be very nuanced and a bit confused, because I think a lot of people think unconditional love means you just keep forgiving people for whatever they do over and over and over and over again. And that's where we can be confusing it with, abandonment of self, and a more codependent kind of definition of it too. That's not what we're talking about. There is a shift in us that happens as you continue to move forward in your emotional IQ, and your emotional
Mhm.
intelligence, and in your self development and your knowing of yourself, know thyself, right? Where you can make a shift from um, where we were as children, where when we're children and we're growing up and developing, we see everything that happens in relation to us. Now, on a
Right.
higher metaphysical level, it's true, but two lenses can be, all the lenses can be true at the same time. But what's very hard is to individuate that and realize that not everything that happens outside of us is a reflection of us or in relation to us and our worth and value as a person, as a soul, as a spirit. And making that shift is one of the biggest gifts we can give to ourselves. And that comes from self love. Really learning to love ourselves helps us to really make a transition and kind of have a initiation into a whole nother way of living and being. And it's also continuous too, so you can reach a certain level of that and then keep getting better and better and better at it. That makes sense. I don't know if there's any final destination in this, right? It's just not like all of a sudden I'm enlightened, I can just love everybody, right? Well, you might be able to unconditionally love that person, but can you unconditionally love that person, right? Well, if that makes sense too. And so, but when we can make that transition to where someone else's behavior or someone else's words or things aren't a reflection of our value as a person, right? Then we can unconditionally love much better. It doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean we don't have, a response to how we're being treated. And it doesn't mean we necessarily have to stay in a relationship with that person. You can love them without going into a level of defense mechanisms to where you're making them the enemy, even if that's for a short period of time. Does that make sense? Because when we get triggered, we kind of, that person then becomes the villain in our lives, right? They're doing it to us, right? And then we're feeling very like hurt, attacked, and everything too. And so it helps to learn to understand how humans work, like how psychologically we interact with one another. And that's also a very spiritual thing too. But so for example, let's say I get triggered by somebody else's behavior or somebody else's words, and it may still hurt, but I remember who I am. I learned to hold myself instead of expecting somebody else to do it for me, right? I've learned to hold myself. But then I also understand that person's trying to get a need met. They're just doing it in a way that doesn't serve them or me in the moment. That makes sense.
Right.
They're trying to get a need met. They've gone into a defense mechanism, but that's not about me. That's not my fault. That's not my thing, right? Right. And that's how you can keep loving that person without turning them into the enemy, without making them the villain. That makes sense too. So it's a transition. It's a transition of our consciousness to where we can see beyond our own little self. And I love my little self so much. I love her so much. But I can see beyond that. That's not all about me or is a reflection to me anymore. It's just someone's trying to get a need met, and that's how they're doing it. And then you let everybody be who they want to be. We try to mold people to behave in the version of themselves that we've projected through our mind. And then we're not loving them as they are. So part of unconditional love is you love people as they are. You let them have their journey. You let them do what they need to do for themselves. You let them just be them, right? That's unconditional love. It's much easier to do with, I think, our kids, right? And maybe even our friends. It's a little harder when we go into partnerships. That's where it gets to be very tricky. And so some people will say, well, you can unconditionally love in relationship with a partner. I think you can, right? The question is what do you do if they can't meet you, right? That's when you have to make some decisions and choose the unconditional love for yourself first, and then figure out how you want to proceed from there too. Because not everybody will be able to meet you the way you want to be met. And that's okay because you're meeting yourself. Does that make sense, right? You're meeting yourself too. And that doesn't mean it's not going to be sad or hurt, but something funny happens when this light starts to turn on within you as you do your own integration and your own personal growth, is that all of a sudden the more you learn to hold yourself and love yourself, and that changes your energy, and you're radiating a whole different frequency and vibration there. How people respond to you starts to change too. Imagine that.
That was a beautiful explanation. And when I think a lot of people could understand, yeah, that was beautiful. You touched on something that I think some people do struggle with, and it's very important to process, and that is self-love. Now, I used to get almost frustrated when people would bring that up in a reading, and it's because it's like I'm doing my best, but it would keep coming up. So, I guess for me, I'd like to know, how would you define self-love? And if someone doesn't even know what self-love looks like for themselves, how could they find it?
Yeah, so we might all be in a different stage or a different process of self love too, and a lot of us may intellectually think we love ourselves and not even have any idea of what's going on in the background, in the unconscious part of our mind, of our belief systems that are also helping to drive and create the reality in our outside circumstances too. So um, that's a very big. We could just talk a whole 2 hours or 4 hours just on self love,
Yeah.
right? Too,
Right.
but it's a much more inward experience, you know. So it's learning to um, see your own self in a very multi-dimensional way, and learn to accept and have compassion and have acceptance for all the part of you. We are the light and the dark in this realm of duality. So we need to also uncover the darkness. And, you know, that's usually through shadow work, right? But in the darkness could also be your greatest treasures and your greatest gifts. So, and then learning to understand that you too, in your mistakes, were trying to get a need met, right? Or you were trying to get a need met. And this is how we learn to forgive ourselves too. And when we understand, well, we were trying to get a need met, everybody's trying to get a need met because they're trying to figure out how to have this experience of love. And we look for it outwards. And that's not wrong. We have mirror neurons, right? So that's part of the journey. You know, what would be helpful as a side note is if in parenting we taught our children to practice self love, looking in the mirror,
Right.
saying, I love you, hugging yourself, meditating with yourself. That can absolutely be done. And we can mirror neuron that, right? Too. And so for me, I've really loved doing parts work. So affirmations are wonderful too. They really help to kind of unstick some of the energy. They help to plant into the unconscious mind seeds, you know, seeds of like there's something else that can help to sort of rewire some of our nervous system and our brain patterns and things like that too. But we have so many different parts. We have a little inner child. We have a little inner teenager. We might have an inner 25-year-old because both of us are over 25 now. And, right. And those parts may be just waiting to be seen, right? They may waiting all this time to feel seen, loved, accepted, and heard. And at the end of the day, that's what everybody, the human desire, the human craving is to feel loved and accepted, to feel like we matter, to feel seen and heard, right? And that gets so much easier when we start to learn to do it for ourselves too. So I listen to my thoughts, I listen to my parts, and I don't judge them. I just go, well, wow, tell me more. Sometimes they got something to say, and I'm like, oh, tell me more, tell me more. And you know what? Over time, it just starts integrating and I feel more and more whole day by day by day. I feel more and more whole. And then I'm not hearing so many thoughts of that anymore too, because it's like everybody's happy in there, right?
Right.
But those
Right.
parts have kind of like integrated into my being. And with that too, though, I've found my higher self now has descended into my being, you could say. It's just a way of looking at it so our minds can wrap our heads around it too. But I'm still on the journey like everybody else too. I'm still working through that. But that's helped a lot for me. So I made a commitment to myself to um, change and transform me for the better. And because I did want to see my outside circumstances change. And I knew that it was up to me. So I was willing to put my feet on the ground and get to work.
That's
Yeah.
hard to do. That's hard to do. I love that you
Yeah.
talk about working with children, because I think that
Yeah.
is something that starts from the very beginning on how we see ourselves. And a lot of it is how our parents see us first, right?
Mm.
Those are the people
Yes.
that that mold us in the beginning. I had a family member
Yeah.
that would always tell her children whenever they passed a mirror, they had to compliment
Hmm.
themselves. I just love that. It's like, I wish that I had some self-confidence like they did and do, I should say. So
Oh, I
it
love
is,
that. That's the best.
it's lovely. The simplest
Hmm.
things can help us to start to see ourselves and give ourselves more forgiveness than we probably do for others. You know, a lot of times you'll see somebody else is struggling or having a hard day, and a lot of times we'll be a lot more forgiving for them than we will for ourselves.
That's so true. And that's because we've developed this very um, smart system of trying to figure out how to sort of survive in this world and be able to be a part of it too. I mean, it's elaborate, but it's intelligent too. And it's like, wow, my mind did all of that to help protect me, right? To help me be able to live and exist and do all of this. But there is another reality beyond just the surviving in that too.
Right.
There is another reality, and it's available for all of us. And I I think it was Louise Hay, who's the one of the
Hmm.
masters of law of attraction and positive affirmation. I am willing to change. And that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means there's so much more available to you, and change you can transform into that too. It means you're willing to grow. And with growth, sometimes comes a little bit or a lot of pain. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that one. It hurts to grow sometimes. It's like
Right.
we have growing pains just in our bones when we're literally growing as physical beings, right? So I get it. I get it. I know how hard it is.
You know, you may have touched on this a little bit, but I'm just going
Yeah.
to expand it if you would. If you have somebody that's having difficulty with setting boundaries, maybe with those that
Yeah.
aren't respecting the things that you need to keep your own inner peace and self-love. What are some of the things that you might suggest to someone who is struggling to set boundaries with people that they love or care
Yeah. And they've got entire books on this topic too. And um, I would say it's a struggle for both men and women to set boundaries, but particularly women, because on a societal, cultural level, going back thousands, 100, centuries, um, we have been taught to make ourselves small. So one of the reasons why it's hard to set boundaries is because what we're used to doing is making ourselves small to try to survive, to try to make everything okay around us too. That's one of the big reasons why it's so hard. And so then it's like, well, why do we make ourselves small? And some of this is I'm going to go back into the broader lens for a minute. A lot of this is just written into our story. Like some of this was pre-planned for us to go through so that we can take the wrong out of it. And it's like on a soul level, we wanted to learn about boundaries, right? So that means
about?
we have to
Right.
put some sort of programming in, but soul programming that would give experiences to help us learn to create boundaries, right? Um, Going back into sort of the more micro human experience of that too, then we can learn to, we have to learn to kind of do this self inquiry, right? The first thing is it might be good to just learn to feel, because when it's hard to set boundaries, then it's also probably hard to feel our own emotions. That makes sense too. So
Mhm.
we've got to learn to allow feeling and sensation to happen within our nervous system with so much love and compassion, knowing that we're not going to die. Because that's the thing. Amygdala comes in, sensation comes in, story plays out. You feel like you're going to die. You feel like you're unsafe, right? And so to start to learn to set boundaries, we have to learn to create safety. We have to learn to understand why it's hard. And then just little by little begin to step by step improve the situation for ourselves too, right? Um, Now, sometimes people can they can go to extreme things to set boundaries, like never again. I'm gonna block you. I'm gonna do that. that's that's one way to set a boundary. but that's also but that's also usually done out of protection, right? Does that
Right.
make sense too? That's usually a thing out of protection. But over time, you will find that you may have an easier time communicating the words, right, of what you need to say. And then there's a couple different things you can learn. So learning communication strategies is also very helpful. I'm giving you a kind of a very detailed answer to this too. So yeah, learning like how do you know what to say when somebody says something manipulative to you or hurtful to you, right? Happens all the time. Everybody's pretty much manipulating each other because they're trying to get a need met, right? They're all trying to get a need met some way, and all of the parts are playing their roles to try to make that happen, right? So, learning how to communicate with those parts can be helpful. Sometimes it may be just a stern response, like, we're like, I'm not allowing myself to be spoken to in that manner. And you figure out what you have to do, either remove yourself out of the situation or whatever you need to do. So learning communication strategies, that could happen through coaching, therapy, reading books, things like that too. I also want to just put a little bit of in situations of abuse, yes, you have to be very careful. If you are in a domestic violence
Yeah.
situation or something like that, you have to be very careful with what you do. In the proper boundary may be going to get help, like little help from a shelter or something like that, whatever you need to do to keep yourself physically safe. But in a more general level, you may get pushback. You may get more defense mechanisms. I'll try this one. I'll try this one. Let me see. First I'm going to go into contempt. Then I'm going to say something violent. Then I'm going to try to manipulate you with some sweetness. And then I'm going to try to do this. And I'm going to make it your. That may happen. It could send you spinning, right? Too. So to be able to stay in your power is not easy. This is a kind of advanced level work to do, and I get that too. But the biggest fear in setting a boundary is that the person's going to leave you, right? Or the person's going to hurt you, right? That's where the fear comes in. It's the little one in us. So we have to really learn to hold our little one in us strong.
We'll
We,
include some important links too at the end of the video if you do find yourself in a dangerous situation and not sure where to turn. So there may be some assistance out there that you can find to help get through those difficult
yeah.
situations.
Mhm. Thank you.
So that's interesting. Let's just say, that somebody has been through something really difficult like this. How
Mhm.
do they now? We've just talked about how they can learn to protect and love their little self, their inner self.
Yeah.
But how can they learn to
Mm.
love somebody that has caused that kind of pain?
That's the $1 million question too, isn't it? Too, and it's going to be easier with some than it is with others, to tell you the truth. But start with one. If you can start with one and you can master that, you can move on to the others too. And so I also understand through my spiritual development and my awareness that I have a strong desire within me as a soul to be part of the elevation of humanity. And to be part of the elevation humanity, I want to maintain a frequency as high as I can of that unconditional love, because then I can see all this darkness and be able to um, put some light and some love into it without it harming the me, if that makes sense, and it's like I can hold compassion for it, even though it's like, whoa, I get it too, right? And so that that reminder helps me to come back into the shift again too. But that's very conscious. That's a very conscious thing that I'm doing, right? It's not the same as me disassociating, distracting, pushing that part aside, right? Too. So I
Mhm.
have to learn to hold whatever emotional sensations I'm going through and then remind myself of the frequency that I'm choosing to remain in as much as possible without denying my inner self, right? And so that helps me as well too. And our relationships really help to teach us about love and about unconditional love. But I've learned that that person's just trying to get a need met. That doesn't mean they're not accountable for their actions. That
Exactly.
doesn't mean you let them continue to present those behaviors toward you. You may have to walk a different path, right? But it means you see beyond these parts of personality. Call it the ego, if you will. I don't I'm very careful with the word ego because it's much more multifaceted than we give it credit for, and we just want to banish it. And that's to me more self-abuse by trying to banish our ego or trying to, but we can grow it, we can transcend it, we can integrate it in with our higher aspect of self to where it's behaving in a different way for us now. And that is, we might say, more preferable for our personality to experience. We might have better experiences. I know it's hard, but when you learn to see yourself and forgive yourself for all of the things where you were trying to get a need met, and then you see why they're doing what they're doing isn't about you, then it makes it a lot easier too. And I've also come to understand that even when people do mean things to you, if they didn't care about you at all, they would do nothing. They'd just
Exactly.
leave. And I'm like,
Hmm.
so that person might be trying to pretend that they don't, that they don't like me, they're rejecting me, and I take it as rejection. I take it as a negative thing towards me. But then I realize they won't even be spending the energy if they didn't care about me in some way or want to get an admit in some way too. And then I was just like, oh, okay. And that's a very careful little spot to go in, because sometimes we're like, they did that because he likes you, right? And it's like, well, it's true and not true. That doesn't mean go and accept bad behavior, but it means like they saw something in you, wanted to try to get a need met, and there's something about your spark or your light or you that they felt a connection to, right? And so that's a kind of another little nuance in this wave too.
Actually, I was going to
Mm.
ask you, even on a grander scale, I think this is another thing that people often wonder, because we've taken it from the smaller perspective of a relationship that you might have with
Yeah,
another person, but there are
yeah.
situations that happen throughout the world
Mm.
that we just don't even understand how they could be happening. How could humans do
Yeah.
something like this to another human? If someone were to ask your opinion on how your worldview is when you see things outside of a relationship, but other circumstances that happen, how do you reconcile that spiritually?
Yeah. Reconcile is the perfect word. That's the perfect word, because what happens is when we see through lenses of good and evil, black and white, right? Duality, right? There's a psychic split that kind of happens within us. How could somebody we thought was good, that loved us, do something so mean and not love us, right? And we can't seem to hold the two at once, and to understand that meaner people can be nice at times and nice people can be mean at times, right? And so we all have a capacity of the dark and the light within us, right? But now we're talking about things that are like really, really in the realm of violence beyond comprehension, and it's like, how do we hold space for that? There might be a point where you have to give that one up to the higher power and just say, I can't, but if you could help me with this, if you could hold me in a container with this, that might help. But the collective is the reflection of the individual as well too. So this is why what each person does for themselves, within themselves, to grow and transcend and transform, will affect the collective. So then we need a critical mass of these people or souls or individuals to keep doing that, right? And you get more and more and more. You start to tip the scales now of
Right.
which playground you want to be on now, right? The
Exactly.
one that's
Yeah.
more harmonious, where we still retain our individuality, but we treat each other with more kindness and respect. We have more telepathic connections with each other, more heart connections with each other. Or this one where we're constantly trying to sort of manipulate and control in order to make things happen. And we see that that doesn't really work. It doesn't seem to be taking us as a whole in a right direction too. But like, what can we do to change it? We individually can't make everything around us change. We can't control all that, and that will drive us crazy and into despair, right?
Right.
So it's a very tricky thing. I know I see things happening in the world, especially like to women and children. I just, oh my God, my heart, it's hard. It's really hard not to break. But I have trust in a few things. I have trust in myself to do my part to help and to be a part of a big change that I do believe is happening. And I have trust that there is so much more going on than we see. And so there is a divine order to things that we don't fully understand. And I also understand I can't control everything that happens either, too. So when we try to like surrender the control over it, that will help too. And um, we're we're never going to change what we might call evil people or destructive behaviors or evil behaviors by throwing more hate at it. That's not going to work. Um, And I do believe in accountability. So when I talk about love, when I talk about forgiveness, all of this too, I'd not take away accountability at all, right? So we absolutely can hold people accountable for their actions, for their behavior, so they won't continue to do those things in whatever way we need to do that's appropriate. Um, but then also still retain a bit of human compassion, because if we go into too much hate energy, we're hurting ourselves. We're adding more of that energy into the collective as well too. So that's where we have to be a little bit careful about what we're adding to the mix, if that makes sense too.
Before
Right.
we close, let's just, I like to close giving those that are interested in this subject different ways that they can do love as a practice. Okay. So, just a couple things that I'd like to ask, like, how can someone recognize the moment they have moved out of love and into fear?
So good, very, very good question. So usually there's going to be some kind of nervous system response and sensation response as well, and thought patterns that are going on with that too. And so here's the trick. Most of us become the response. We become the thought. We become the part that is now up front and center. And we can't learn to sort of separate maybe our more adult self or our higher wisdom from that part. And they start driving the bus, right? So learning to feel our sensations and say, you are safe, you are safe, you are safe. This emotion is going to move through me and become one with the emotion, like lean into it and allow yourself to feel it. This is why people like to listen to sad songs and they don't know why. There is a part that it's cathartic. We're feeling through
Right.
the emotion, right? And to us, the soul, every emotion is great experience to the soul. It's just we think that we need to go into survival mode, right? And then watch our thoughts with compassion. Oh, I'm not supposed to think that. That's not spiritual. I shouldn't have thought that, right? Right. And then we just do
Right.
more of that, more of that, more of that. And I just go, oh, where's that coming from? And then I go another layer and another layer and another layer. And then you get down to like the root of it, by being curious, by being compassionate, by being non-judgmental with yourself, right? So that helps. But yeah, so it's can be very, very quick when we make a shift, right? So
Right.
learning to feel your body, feel your energy, notice what your thoughts are doing, and then hopefully that will give you some time to do some inner work or some reflection, to maybe take a pause before you actually react to a situation. So you can take a moment, hopefully, instead of erupting. Because what happens is when we're not doing this kind of work, we tend to erupt, right? And boom,
Exactly.
oh, who was that? I don't know who that was that just came out of me. I don't know why I said that. I wish I could take it back. And I don't want people to think I'm a bad person. All of this kind of comes into play in, in our minds, right?
Well, just to conclude, I would just ask, after everything that you've experienced through your mediumship, through trance work, your own life experiences, um, what do you believe that spirit is ultimately trying to teach humanity about love?
I one time had this thought that, would the divine want to test its limits again and again and again to see if the love could still survive, right? And it always does. We're in a process of continual evolution, and so there is a learning of the self, a know thyself, and of knowing, as many mystical leaders of our time have said, it's all within you, right? And
Right.
so when we learn to just really fill ourselves up, we have so much more to give, and we can hold space for so much more too. Um, but yes, we could potentially be taking ourselves to such extremes that we have to pull so much out of us to um, almost challenge love itself. But you know what? It always wins. It always survives at the end. You can't kill love. You can't kill beauty. You can't kill grace. You can't kill compassion. Those are forces that are indestructible, and they are divine, and they are sacred. And when we can learn to hold everything in at least a sacred container, that word seems to be a word that we can all kind of wrap our heads around. Every passing to spirit is sacred, no matter how somebody passed. So if we can hold that same frequency somehow in all of this other unfathomable things that we see happening, we can maintain our energy. We can maintain our heart coherence, and our connection. And I think we can do some really amazing and extraordinary things coming up in the future as a collective. I have great hope for us. And for some reason, the divine really likes to find beauty in the darkness. But those flowers grow up through cracks in the pavement, and you go, how did that happen? Right? But then we look into our own darkness, and we find so much beauty was existing in there the whole time. And so the beauty we find within, somehow as a collective, we also have to find together. Somehow the collective needs to find the beauty, the grace, and the sacred container that's holding it all. That's the grand awakening, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that. And I'm sure you're like, oh, let me just put that in a last minute because that in itself could be its own book. Its own book. That is for
Thank you.
sure. There are so many facets of love. I think that's the one thing that I take away from all of this,
Yeah.
especially when I listen to you and different things that I get from spirit. It is the
Mhm.
divine in all its facets. But the way you
Yeah.
described it at the end, that I will take that with me. That is quite beautiful
Yeah.
because I think it would
Thank
help
you.
a lot of us to see that. I think too sometimes when we come out of our dark space where we've had all our healing or we're still working on our healing, that glimpse of light that you see when you come out is just, it can be the smallest bit, but
Mm.
it is, you
Yes,
just want to hold it so tight because it's so precious, once you've had
it
to
is.
struggle to get to that space. So
Yeah.
I
It
love
really
this. And I
is.
think a lot of these things will be helpful. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
I feel so honored to share this space with you. So I'm so grateful that we got to talk about this, and I didn't even expect all this to come out the way it did. And I'm happy. I feel very grateful to Spirit as well for holding the two of us in this sacred container so we could talk about such an important thing. And so thank you for inviting me.
All right, everyone. To find Jennifer Rose, you're going to find there's several links in the description. We'll have links to the different podcasts, websites, social media channels, and I encourage you to find them because, as you can see, Jennifer is she's a treasure, and we're so grateful that she was able to join us here today. So thanks again, Jennifer, and we hope to see you soon.